Let's talk more about this COVID relief bill with California Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, great to see you.
Great to see you.
All right, I want to talk about something that isn't getting a lot of attention, but is actually one of the biggest parts of this bill, which is an extension of the child tax credit. Listen up if you're a parent out there, because this could mean more money for you. Can you explain how this works and how this could really be a radical change in what we're doing in this country?
Well, it would provide $3,000 to $4,000 per child for families that are eligible, depending on their income level. And what it will effectively mean is it will lift half of the children who are currently in poverty in this country out of poverty. Many people are calling this the biggest anti-poverty bill in a generation. So in addition to everything else that it's doing, it's going to help millions of kids around the country. And that is, as the president would say, that's a big deal. And he would say it in a more colorful way.
Yeah, he in the past, he, of course, used the F word when talking about that. But, I mean, it's something.
You had to specify,
yeah.
didn't you?
Well, I mean, accuracy is important, Congressman. We're talking about families making less than $150,000 here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Congressman, you are a Democrat. The vote was 220 to 211, not a single Republican vote. Now, President Biden has said he's a president for all Americans. How does this bill reflect that?
It reflects it in the tremendous public support and Republican support around the country. So many Republican mayors and Republican governors and Republican voters are behind this bill, which enjoys, 60 to 70% approval, which is pretty extraordinary given how divided the country is. I think the real question is, why is the Republican leadership in Congress, and membership for that matter, so much at odds with Republican leaders around the country and Republican voters around the country? I certainly wouldn't want to be out there advocating for reopening schools and voting against the funding that schools need to safely reopen. So I think they're in a very poor situation voting against the bill that will do so much good.
What is your answer to that? Why do you think the House members that are Republican voted no?
I think that, unfortunately, in the Congress, the Republicans represent the moneyed interests, large corporations, wealthy families. This bill doesn't have much for large corporations and wealthy families. The tax cut they passed a couple years ago was around the same size as this bill. And it shows the different priorities that the parties have in Congress. I think in the country, frankly, the priorities that are in this bill are the priorities shared by the American people, even if they're not shared with their representatives in Congress.
You know, what they say, though, is that this bill is simply too big. That California, for example, is actually in a budget surplus right now with reserves, and maybe we don't need all of this, and it could run the risk of inflation. It's too much government spending, and it's going to be deficit spending for a generation. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say, where was your concern about deficits a couple of years ago when you spent an equivalent amount on tax cuts for large corporations and wealthy families? It's all a question of values and priorities. And my priority is lifting kids out of poverty, helping small businesses reopen, helping families put bread on the table, and helping people stay with a roof over their head. So that's what this bill does. It's why it's so popular in the country. And I really think my colleagues in Congress are making a mistake who voted against it.
We've got about a minute left. So what do you think is the biggest win for Californians?
Well, I think that it's really much the same for the rest of the country, and that is it's going to accelerate vaccinating the public and getting our economy reopened, getting our schools reopened, getting back to life as normal as we used to know it. And given that we have been so ravaged by the virus in California, we will derive as much, if not more, benefit from this than any other state.
And last question, there's a lot of people that are going to want to know this. When can I get my money? So for people that are expecting checks, when can they get their stimulus check? When can they get the child tax credit? What's the process now for people in terms of actual implementation of this?
It should be very soon. If people filed taxes electronically, they may get their electronic deposit as soon as the end of this month. For those that use snail mail, it'll take longer because they'll get a check back in snail mail. In terms of the child tax credits, when people start to file their returns, they'll be able to get those credits. And so, very soon, depending on your family circumstance, and I know for a lot of families it can't come fast enough.
It sounds like there's a lot of incentive to file your taxes. There's extra reason to.
Congressman Adam
Yes,
Schiff.
and if you didn't file last year, there's a mechanism where you can still file to get the $1,400 or the $2,800 for a family. So be sure that you do file if you didn't file last year.
All right, Congressman Adam Schiff, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.